That's exciting. So fifth, ranked fifth in the world. Yeah, so it's really, you find it an inspiring environment. Well, I wish you tons of great luck. I hope you really enjoy studying there, and I'm sure you'll be really successful. I heard from other students. We had a student who had studied at, I think it was Oxford in the architecture program, and she said it was really quite different approach to education than what we're used to in Canada. But I'm sure you're up to the challenge. And I hope you'll stay in touch and share with us some of the things that you're making. I think students would find that really interesting to see what is it like to study architecture at Manchester. Hey, it's PortPrep here with Benson, and Benson applied to many schools in Canada and America and the UK for architecture. So Benson's here to tell us about his portfolio preparation experience and show us his portfolio that got him accepted.
Hi, I'm Benson. I'm Canadian and Taiwanese. I spent my high school years in Surrey, BC, Canada. And so let's just jump straight in. I applied to UBC, U of T, Toronto Metropolitan University, which was formerly Ryerson. And then as for UK schools, I applied for Sheffield, Bath, Manchester, and UCL. Usually you have five, but I did double choices in UCL through the UCAS application. I also applied to Harvard and SFU, and yeah, that's mostly it. I got accepted to all these schools except Harvard, UCL, and UBC Architecture. Um, yeah,
That's
and
amazing. All of those schools. What school did you ultimately decide on getting on accepting?
I ended up deciding on University of Manchester. So it's like in UK, but it's the second biggest city. It's currently ranked fifth in the world. So the ranking played a little in the choice as well as I think like the budgeting since like London is expensive, but Manchester is also expensive, but it's more affordable on that hand, and also as well as I think the environment. So it's more like laid back and more similar to the area I lived in before.
That's exciting. So fifth, ranked fifth in the world. That's exciting. That's really wonderful. Congratulations. You were a very dedicated, hardworking student. Um, so we want to hear more. What does it take to get accepted to a program like that? What kind of courses did you sign up for or programs that helped you make such a strong portfolio?
So I took a UBC Design Discovery course. It's a summer program for like 2 weeks, but it basically allows you to test out like design stuff more focused on architecture. So whether or not you actually enjoy design, and it's basically just getting your creative brain going. And I have it here, like the what we did in the thing.
Oh, that would
Yeah,
be interesting to see.
so
Do you want to show us that?
yeah.
What age were you when you did that, and what grade did you do that in?
That was the summer between grade 10 to 11. Got me thinking about architecture because I started wanting to interact with architecture and maybe explore this area. So the first assignment, I was assigned a tissue box, the typical one. You see this all the time, and basically made a lantern out of it. So, and then the second one is about combining two spaces together. So I ended up combining my favorite view, like a park view location, with my room. And so, although this doesn't look really architecture, it's quite connected because all the design process and the creative thinking, all those type of things actually helps a lot in architecture. And these two are more architecture focused projects. This third one, we explored different techniques. And the fourth one was a pavilion design. You also get to see like all these other people's works from different groups, and yeah, so it was a great experience, and
Ah,
that definitely helped. They around 1.5 year
okay,
is when I
that's
started. I
good.
would suggest you start earlier if you could, but I kind of got interested in architecture around that time, so yeah, that's where it all started.
Great. Um, what courses did you take besides that? Because I think you did some other courses outside of the help you reached from us at PortPrep.
So I also had Emily Carr Head Start and Art program. That one was a Surrey district program, so I was able to get in like basically at our university and have like a, let's say, half a semester of art like practice before uh in high school in grade 12 before applying to any universities. So I think that was a great opportunity. It was just basically techniques. It's more general art focused, not really architecture focused, but as I said, it helps with the techniques and with your creative brain. So yeah. And then, as well as one more thing I wanted to say is, I think National Portfolio Day is quite important. It gives you amazing opportunities to meet like all schools, well, most of schools from all around the world. So UAL was there, Rhode Island of Design, I think, Emily Carr, a bunch, OCADU. So actually, that was a free portfolio review from however schools you could meet, basically. Yeah, they give you feedback, they give you inspiration, all those type of things, and yeah, it was quite a good opportunity. And as for school wise, I took art, drafting, photography, more art aspects of classes, as well as some academic classes. Sciences, I mainly took physics, and yeah.
So while you're speaking about your grades or your high school, what were your grades?
So my grade 11, it was straight A's for like the second half. Like since grade 9, I only have one B in grade 8. But in grade 11, my average was basically 98%, and then my grade 12 average was 95%.
Commendable. And students are often wondering how much do the grades matter? How much does the portfolio matter? In general, the portfolio matters the most, but the grades help, right? Were there other things that you had to do besides making a portfolio? How much writing or other video or whatever did you have to make for these various schools? Did you have to interview those kinds of things?
So let's go from Canadian schools first. So for UBC, you have your three creative tasks, and I suggest doing this earlier if you want, if UBC is your top choice, because I was more mainly focused on my portfolio for UK schools, so I didn't spend that much time. So I think that was why I kind of pushed it last second, like last second. But yeah, so there's three creative tasks there. You have to have one resume prepared and as well as one interview. For my year it was a self interview online, so it was a prompt and then you had to answer it during like a set of amount of time. And for moving on to Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson again, um, they had one creative task that I needed to put under my portfolio. So aside from my main portfolio that I handed in, I also had a creative task that I had to do. I think it was similar to the paper project in like PortPrep. So basically, you had to make different cuts or tape or any of those type of things with a set amount of limitations to a piece of paper and make it look architectural in a way. And for UK schools, UCL was my dream school, didn't get in, but that's okay. They asked for my portfolio and only an interview. So I got to the interview stage, and I'd say one thing for the interview is show more passion when speaking. Try and be more than, be more enthusiastic in a sense. And so, yeah, that was just portfolio and interview. If you get an interview, it's a good sign, but don't, keep going after that, keep practicing for your interview. And for Sheffield, it was portfolio plus one creative task. So University of Sheffield, there is one portfolio, so main portfolio, and one specific task. So this year's task was called My Street. So basically, it just gave a little brief information about the prompt, and then the rest is for you to create. So basically, my street was a combination of where I lived before, like all the places, because I was born in Toronto and then I went to um, British Columbia as well. So I layered all the streets together and talked about my story myself and like why it's important to me and how I interact with the environment, that type of thing. Um, so that was for Sheffield. And as for Manchester, it asked for one page write up of why you wanted to study at Manchester, and then plus the portfolio itself. And obviously, all these schools have different requirements for your portfolio length, like your pages and all those type of things. And that these things are aside from the application itself. So there is, for instance, UBC application, there's a different set. But if for UBC, if you're only applying to architecture, you don't have to do the entire application. But if you have a second choice in UBC, then you still have to do it. So it's up to you to take the gamble, I suppose, if you want. And for UK schools, it's just UCAS application. So basically, they're still writing, but aside that, there's like the portfolio and the additional stuff that I just talked about.
How did you keep all of those requirements organized?
I'd say just one at a time. Take things one at a time. Don't like do all and like mix it up. Stay organized is quite important, I'd say. So think I left the more important schools on like the later end. So, for example, Manchester and UCL, my main focus ish. I pushed it back to later. So, I handed in like the earlier versions of portfolios so I could revise, and then finally it was time for my Manchester and UCL, which was more like refined in a sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So did you have choice of when you submitted them to some
I think
extent?
there were deadlines. I think Manchester was quite early in sometime in January, I think. They have their requirements on their website, so
Yeah, yeah.
you could always check that out. And then UCL was later in March, I think March, April.
So
Yeah.
as you made a basic portfolio and then adjusted it for each school, um, and you would just continue to improve your portfolio each time you submitted it. Is that what you did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
Okay. So that's sounds like a lot to organize. Um, and did you have anybody helping you um, as a mentor at home, like in your life, or did you just organize all of this yourself?
I think mentor-wise, aside from big helps from PortPrep, I think it was just mainly myself taking control of everything. I went for opportunities, go for any opportunity you could find. For instance, like National Portfolio Day, it was a great one, and all those type of things. Yeah, so it was
Okay.
just mainly me.
So, I would love to see this portfolio, and I think anybody listening to this would like to see your portfolio. Wow, that
You
looks
guys do that
slick.
too?
What did you lay out your portfolio using? What program?
I used Adobe InDesign, so the typical portfolio making software. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the final result. Part of what you did is you made several different options. And that was part of what you were doing within your personal mentorship with us, is showing all the various layouts, all the various, the content and what title page to use. So, but this was the final result. So before we begin, what courses did you take with PortPrep?
So I took the architectural and design course, and my course was the full one. So you got the private sessions as well as the group sessions, and as well as the intensive portfolio reviews. I also had some sessions. Right, so that's me. So I'd say for making a portfolio, it's important about showing who you are. So it's basically be feel free to express yourself, and you definitely should express who you are as a person. So here I have the gray colorway, carrying on into different pages. So basically, I have different sections to my portfolio. So mainly my thesis project, and then as well as some exploration, art, and photography. So the first project, it starts with sound waves. So I think I'll just go over my main thesis project the most, and later on we could do whatever on the other ones. So for the first one, um, this is the way I decided to present this is through the process. So I'll take you along the journey of reading through the portfolio, and then we could explain the process afterwards. So here is sound waves that are captured from birds chirping. Basically, I studied sound wave and try and make connections to architecture through the things we can't necessarily see, but are important to us. So I decided to create the architecture project called Rising Up. So essentially, to me, it was a force that you can't see, but is so strong that is essential for life. So, for example, although you can't see sound, it is really important in our lives and definitely helped us in lots of ways. So, for Rising Up, I captured the idea of pushing beyond the darkness or the challenges in life, and that's what helps us, succeed and is necessary in life. So this is a model done by hand, and then the photography is all by myself as well. So photography is quite important because you could present your works pretty well if you do that. One tip on making these models is try to have a cleaner edge, and try and refine it more. But so this idea was basically created through like different techniques. So my platform here, I actually use the technique I learned in UBC. So it's kind of like layering the um, levels of hills kind of out, and then showing that kind of lift off into the darkness. So the use of this building is a place that I wanted to create a place where everybody could connect and kind of make a better future in a sense. So where people could connect from different areas, and basically communicate and create a rising force that tackles whether that is climate change, all those different social issues in the world. So I also included a library to help everyone. So essentially, it's a recreational kind of thinking tank, I'd say, in a sense.
Yeah. So when you mentioned your thesis project, this thesis project was made as part of the course at Port Prep called Architecture and Design Portfolios. And you chose to mostly work on one project throughout the entire course, where other people make, maybe four different pieces. You made one in really thorough way, which I think for the schools you were applying for really made a difference. That it was really carefully thought out and processed and explored. I would have loved to work with you on making the model more. You did it on your own, and yeah, some better model making skills would have helped, but
Yeah.
we did careful photography and sort of choose which photographs really show the concept the most. So if you are making a model and you're in one of our courses, taking it at the private level could help, and reaching out for help when you if you know you're doing something that you don't feel you have a lot of experience in, it's worth asking for help. It's, can I see how to do that? Can I show you my progress so far? Because basically it was done and I didn't have the opportunity to share you. So what I would say to other students in the future, check in with your mentor often enough to make sure that what you're doing is effective. In the end, it didn't matter, but it did help you kind of pick which views to use, as opposed, so like we avoided like really close ups right, of this, so that we could really show the concept, as opposed to, hey, you still need some model making skills, and that's okay. And yeah, and advocated for really clean, simple photography. We show a lot of examples, which I think really you were able to take the examples we showed you and be able to figure it out on your own really well. And we worked on layout and descriptions and all of these things to make sure the idea was coming across. So let's look more at the idea. There's a lot of thought behind this project. Do you want to show us that and tell us a little bit about it?
So for my schools, I'd say also do research on the schools you want to apply to. For my main focus was UK schools, so the process was important. And as well as for Canadian schools, I think they want more creative type of things as well as process as well. But the research and the process was quite focused in UK architecture portfolios. This is still part of the first project. This was in fact the process that I decided to present in the second half. So it all started with sound waves and how they developed with reacting to different type of sound and different type of waves and all those type of things. So I thought of the idea of rising, since there's a lot of rising and falling. So I decided to sketch electric times, as you can see on the right side. Um, and basically going through and picking the best ones that convey the emotions and the message, the lesson behind the story and behind the art piece. So I chose 8 of them and then went to Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, and created them in more refined ways. Um, and as well as develop them through different techniques, starting from paper and then sketching over them, designing, refining the designs, and finally reaching the final design, which is seen here. I think in the process there was this was also done by PortPrep, so top left. Well, basically all the pages, like this page, had I gained a lot of help from PortPrep. Basically, the top left project was where it all started, although it's not presented in that way. The piece of paper crumbled up and then designed into a mountain was the initial start of this project. And it ended up becoming connected to sound waves and all those type of things. But PortPrep helped me a lot during the creative process because oftentimes I'd get stuck at one point and I'm not sure what to do to like the next step. And since that's the design process, you always get stuck and then you figure it out and then you keep going. Corporate helped me a lot in guiding me in the directions or questioning myself, like the different techniques or ways I could make this project better. And inspired me in a sense to think about the project more critically and how I could use connect it to myself more and how I could present it in a more thorough way. And I'd say for the corporate class, presentation helped me a lot. That was a big one during like my sessions as well, like in the near the end. It was how I should lay out these portfolios and how I should convey my messages. Since although you can have a great project, if you can't communicate your ideas or your process or all those type of things, people won't be able to know like what's going on the project. So if you communicate well, it's really crucial in a portfolio to present what you're thinking and your thoughts and your like process. Um, yeah.
Yeah. So we took your various concepts of the mountain and sound waves and flow and this concept of rising up. And so we looked to see what were the common threads that were coming up through the various explorations of sketches, model making, um, the sound waves, and looked for the common theme. And then we explored that common theme through those little thumbnail sketches on the second page, on page 4. So here, those little tiny thumbnail sketches, the little black and white sketches along the right-hand column, that was exploring two-dimensional design that explores the idea of rising up, of many people coming together to make change. Think that think tank idea of what does it mean for several people to come together with their innovative ideas and energy to say we need to change something. There's a big problem. We're very concerned about climate change and supporting those mountains and supporting the nature and the bird sounds. You live in a mountainous region. Um, and you wanted to be able to say, how can we bring people together and push this big obstacle of how we're going to handle climate change and various other social issues that we're experiencing, and that where you live in British Columbia is experiencing a lot of serious issues going on, between social housing and real estate prices and forest fires and all of that. And so that's what these the colored images are exploring. How do we show this sense of many coming together and rising up, much like a mountain does, like the fault block mountains of BC. And that's what these images are showing us. And so that's the kind of thing we do with students, is help them explore the ideas behind the architecture and to find out what is the architectural form, because it's based on the visualization of a concept. So it's really that um, more symbolic type of architecture, not just practical sort of let's contain space, right? And put people in it. It's where it's a really inspirational type of architecture. And that's what some of the types of schools you wanted to apply for are looking for. So a lot of what we do at PortPrep is help students think through their work and how to show that visually, and then go through that process so that we end up with a final result. So lots and lots of sketches. And then where did you make this piece? This was not done through PortPrep.
So this project was one of the projects in Emily Carr, the Head Start in Art program. Basically, this one explored the concept of time. We had a final model in the end. So basically, it talked about the connection between the past, the present, and the future. So we started off. This was a group project between me and my partner. We had a bunch of ideas. We started sketching the ideation stage, and then we started sketching more. Did a mock-up model on the left side, as you can see, just a super quick one to get our brains thinking, and we also sketched that again, and then created our final concept idea. So the past was created through plaster to show the how it's set in stone and it cannot be changed. the present is different strands of piece of paper, all intertwined with blank piece of paper with different stripes on it to showcase that sense of being in the present and having all the opportunities that you could take on and the challenges you're facing that all comes together to the future, which is essentially a flower wrapped around the wire that creates this sense of end of this blooming, blossoming future.
Wow, that's beautiful. It feels almost cosmic, you know, like galaxies and black holes and string theory and time, three and fourth dimensions. I think because it's dark too and this sort of swirling energy. Yeah, it's very fascinating. It uh, really embodies what you guys were exploring. Beautiful.
And for this project, this was a UBC Creative test that I snuck in. So I think this one was a lantern for iPhone, which they had for a few years. So take notes, go for it.
Yeah, they've been using this for a few years. I wonder if they're going to keep doing it this next application year or not.
So for my lantern for iPhone, I decided to explore more of a sleeping lantern in a sense. I wanted there to be a more relaxing feel to my lantern. So at the bottom right, you can see the effect of the lantern, which has this sense of watery feel that calms you down essentially. The original plan was to fill the lantern with literally water to pour it in, but I thought that wouldn't work that well. So I ended up discovering that these plastic wraps kind of act in similar ways of the reflections of water. So I just scrambled it up and then threw it in the bottle itself. So it started with sketching ideas, exploring light and shadow. This project was kind of inspired by a design by Big Beer Kingo's Group, which is my favorite architect and architecture firm. It was Biosphere, I think. Basically, it was a bird watching hotel, but instead, I wanted to create this interaction between the inside of the lantern and the outside to create that sense of uniqueness in a sense. So I also explored materials, which is quite essential in architecture and as well as all those um, ideas you're trying to convey. And for these, I call them inception, kind of tackling how architecture is all around us. The small things even can be created into architecture. So, for instance, I think it was plastic wrapping that was intended as garbage, but instead I created it into architecture form. So I basically just bought a wooden platform on the bottom, and then I grabbed the thing I wanted to make it architecture, and then placed it on top, and then sketched the little people over it afterwards. So on the other one, it's paper clips layered, and all the material tells a lot of things while like conveying your feelings. So where the metal, whereas paper clips are quite light, but when they come together and reflect off the dark background, it actually shows a sense of heaviness. Whereas the transparent plastic shows a sense of light and bright atmosphere. I
Interesting.
wanted to show the juxtaposition between these two projects. I think this one I did by myself. I was inspired by, I think, a Japanese architect or artist. He basically presented architecture. I think it was called Architecture Around Us or something, where he grabbed like household objects and just layered them in interesting ways to create a sense of architecture. And for Navigator, this was a PortPrep project. It was basically transforming a milk tank into a lantern as well. So I created this spaceship looking object with these weird lines coming out from like the, I'd say, stomach area, I suppose. And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I don't give like we didn't give any guidelines, just that. So it wasn't to make a lantern. It was just you have a very simple, limited design prompt of you have a milk carton or juice carton, and you have to transform this somehow to create something of interest. And I think this was a really unique take on it. And you really were conscious of how to photograph it and utilize the space, the way you photographed through the opening, and bringing the little figures into it, creating it like a spaceship hovering above. Really fascinating. Yeah, because this really challenges students to think creatively. Can they challenge themselves with this really difficult, narrow, how am I supposed to make a milk carton look good? You know? And what do I do about that label? How do I use that effectively? And what can I do that's unique and interesting? And it really shows the creative thinkers compared to the people that are still working through how to design in an interesting way given a limited prompt. And this was one of the most unique ones I've ever seen. Really gorgeous. I love it. And well presented. And you didn't just do one, you did three. All unique, very interesting designs as well. But this one was the strongest, and we decided that it was appropriate to include it in the portfolio.
so before we head on to that, I think PortPrep also did like a technique video on how to cut these milk cartons. So I think that also helped me um, kind of like some of the ideas was from like that technique video I watched. So yeah,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
moving on, yeah, for layers of simplicity, this is basically egg rolls. I just kind of this these two projects are more connected in a sense, I suppose, in things you could eat and household items. And so egg rolls, I decided to layer them in interesting ways to create that sense of architecture feel.
Right. So kind of combining what you learned from the Japanese architect or artist with some of the things you were learning in the Port Prep course. Yeah. And that's what you ideally want to do, right? What we're teaching is how to think creatively and be curious to explore different themes visually through different materials. So interesting. Love it. That little wooden painting support is really useful in your work. That's a great idea.
Moving on to my art section, these two art pieces are made during the Emily Carr program. The first one talks about memories, you know, how the past has these, you might have a dark past as well as some other intertwined in between, but it's all important. That's why I decided to create a golden type of feel and a light, bright feel. In a sense, it's talking about how the past is actually important and helps shape who we are. And for wave of change, it's similar to the concept of rising up, people rising towards, moving towards a destination, which is the orange cross in the background. That one, I think, was one of like the stronger pieces, I think, from everyone. They basically told me this piece was quite strong. And moving on, so this section is just mainly artwork. This one was beneath the surface, exploring the koi fishes, how they're swimming around each other, and through these glitches of um, things. So basically, I drew three different, I think, versions. So one was a pencil sketch, one was watercolored, and then one more I think I did on Photoshop or as well as Procreate to showcase that layer. So one had color, one had pencil marks, let's say, to showcase the calming balance and the surroundings and how everything comes together despite the being the unique ones.
So, did Emily Carr help you learn the various media techniques and then how to think about artwork in conceptual ways?
I think they didn't really teach me those techniques. Rather, I was taking photography as well as I took IT9 in the past before, and it helped me a lot with these projects, especially with the Adobe softwares. So InDesign and Photoshop, all those type of things were very touched upon in photography, and as well as just learning it yourself, trying out softwares and playing around with it.
Yeah,
Be curious. So
beautiful.
moving on, these are more architectural sketches and urban sketches. So the street scene was done by ballpoint pen and just basically sketched from a reference photo. This was my grade 11 art class. So yeah, that was a school project. And then on the right hand side, those three, one of them was a school sketchbook assignment. The rest was just sketched on my own time. There's ones that are keep the lines clean and constructed, and there's also the ones where I just quickly sketch out like main focus of the main focus area of the photograph or the idea, um, and as well as for the urban sketches of people in the lower bottom side, it was capturing the moment. I think for me, capturing what people be
Yeah.
sketching their emotion in a sense. So this one was
Oh,
more of a people study page. So the left side, one of them was from Emily Carr, and then the rest was me just playing around with portraits and just sketching quickly. And so I think these two pages have interaction with others. So basically, it was two-page layout, one on each side, and then PortPrep helped me a lot in how to present these two pages so that they speak to each other in a sense. So we could quickly just run through my portfolio again with like the dual page layout later on. But this page was just portrait studies, and then the right hand portrait was a reference photo I found online, and this was for Art 11 as well. So for school project.
beautiful. Because what students are often tempted to do is just, oh, I've got this wonderful portrait I drew. Oh, I've got this wonderful urban sketch, and just present this artwork. Yeah, but then it's kind of disjointed feeling. It doesn't connect, and it doesn't show very much creativity or process. It almost feels more art assignment based, where this really brings in your curiosity of exploring a subject of portrait drawing, exploring urban sketching, and in your own way, pulling it together with some of these school projects. And now it relates more to the rest of your portfolio because you do a lot of sketching and exploring, and shows a little bit more what your creative diversity is than just showing these finished artworks. So this really works well.
Going on, and as well as that, it creates a sense of flow in your portfolio as well. So when the portfolio reviewer are reading, it's better in a sense. Yeah. And so here I have two pages my photography. So the first page I decided to do some street photography. These were my photography 11 works. If I had photography 12 my first semester in grade 12, it would have been better since I would have had different photos in there. But yeah, these photos were for grade 11. So this was basically just capturing the moment around like street. And yeah, and for these two, One, the left side hair shutter effect was basically a Photoshop project where you take three different photos and just different photos of the same subject interacting, and then just layer them together. Um, and yeah, and then for architecture, I captured some photos that kind of convey different concepts of architecture in a sense. So, for example, symmetry, top right, and then as well as the shadow and darkness and how we interact with architecture as well as how architecture makes us feel.
Wonderful portfolio. And then I love that you finish it with a back cover. Yeah.
And then
And
back
it brings
over,
us back to that
yeah,
beginning, right? It just pulls it all together gorgeously.
the first page, and then so I'll just quickly go through these so you guys can see how it interacts. So, for example, this page we made it so it kind of speaks to um, like one one page speaks to another. For instance, we had the color like in the right hand side, middle-ish, and then the black and whites on the right. So both pages have a black and white on the right hand side type of thing. And then this project was just presented as two pages since it's one of them. This one as well. And then these four projects were basically exploring architecture around me. So that's why I put it together. And as well as these art pieces started with memories connecting to the sense of flow in this project, as well as like exploring the areas around us, then into like a more watery type of feel, which is why then we had the fish afterwards, and then the sketches see how these two pages connect together. They had the same height, so all the details are quite important in our portfolio. So make sure you double check everything before handing it in. Um, yeah,
Yes.
and
So
make sure
you
you check
worked
it.
on several layouts. We went over graphic layout, how to line things up, how to create page balance, what flows well to create a good sort of narrative, or that there's nothing that feels disjointed. Everything sort of relates and one thing flows to the next. So if you take both the architecture course or do the intensive portfolio review, these are times to select which pieces, what order, how do we lay that out, where basically you're learning how a portfolio is a visual essay, showing who you are as a creative person and proving that you're ready for application and acceptance into a particular university. And so it's really carefully curated and laid out between the creator, you, Benson, in this case, and with my input. And you explored it yourself a lot, and then we would go through it and just fine tune it. And in the end, that's a really it flows like a coffee table book or a magazine or an architectural magazine, right? And so with the high level schools, they're looking for that, but also um, be careful that not to just make it look graphically glossy, right? They're looking for good work, good ideas. Like if they don't see substance behind the good layout, they're not interested, right? It's you can't hide. You can make something look a lot better with good graphic layout, but they're on to you. They're looking for good content, good skill, great ideas, and you had all of that plus a really good layout that explains your idea as well. I think it would have been great to be able to see the written descriptions a little bit bigger or in a slightly bigger font to make it easier to take in that information behind all of that ideas. But I think we still get a sense of your thought process visually, and that's really the most important thing. That's so exciting to see. What a really thorough portfolio. Do you have advice from all this experience you've had that you think, or recommendations, what are some key things that you learned that you think you wish you had known before or that you think other students would really find beneficial to know?
So one thing during my journey essentially was the time aspect because I think I started quite like later compared to others. I started only in grade 11, so I had to focus on working hard on these different tasks and all those type of things. Um, and so if you're quite sure you want to study architecture or different types of art things. Try and start early building your portfolio and developing skills. I think that was definitely quite important. As well as I think enjoying the process because I think the most rewarding and exciting aspects of making my portfolio was the process itself. Try and find, try and enjoy the process and see the improvements during your process. So it kind of shows, kind of gives you a sense of a motivation while you're journeying on this like portfolio building journey. And at the end, when you look back on the portfolio, you're like, wow, that's the work I did. And yeah, it's an amazing feel, but still enjoy the process. It's important. And yeah, I think I'll just say discipline was a big one. Grade 11, I tried to stay disciplined, so I could force myself to do the things that I didn't want to do. That was a big part. When you first started doing that, it's quite hard because you're like you don't want to do it, but you force yourself to do it. But um, it goes on and it becomes a habit. Then you get things done on time, and it's way easier afterwards. Yeah.
So you sort of built, you adapted to building that, working on it on a regular basis, that it just
Yeah.
became part of your life and part of your schedule.
Also
Um,
having a good sleep schedule, because for me, I'm more of an early bird. Yeah, because like you could stay up late at night, but it's not that healthy, and plus you won't be able to think that well like during like 2 a.m. in a sense. So that helped a lot. So being up early was, your mind is clear, and especially during like early mornings, there's not really anything to distract you except birds chirping, which is kind of why I got that idea. So I'd say be open to different opportunities, and do your research on YouTube. Um, Push yourself to try new things and all those things.
what was the most challenging thing for you in creating your portfolio?
I think for one thing was the time aspect, since I talked about how I started later on in grade 11. Um, uh, the other main thing was getting stuck during idea development, since designing the process, you kind of get stuck a lot of times because you're just not sure what next step is or what to do next in a sense. But basically, take your time because inspiration is all around us, and try and pay attention to the little things. They also give inspiration in unique ways. So yeah, don't be pressured to have to finish the project in an instant and have like this amazing thing in like a week, because I think my project took like 6 months, around 6 months. My main one, the rising up, and even longer, 6 plus months of just constantly working, I suppose, and letting it sit, making my life connected to the project itself. So embracing myself with the experiences around me also help communicate who you are, because that's a portfolio.
So, how important do you think the guidance you got from PortPrep was in creating this successful portfolio?
Yeah, it would definitely help me a lot, a lot. I started without like thesis project. I started with just knowing I want to study architecture. but not really have any projects that's worth showing up. So I think PortPrep definitely guided me and how I could develop these set of projects, which in the end created my portfolio. I had constant help on these projects, reviewing and questioning and encouraging me to, have different views and challenging my perspectives. And I think that's really helpful when you're like stuck in the design process, obviously, but as well as thinking about project in a more architecture view rather than in our artistic view, since those architecture kind of concepts, as well as terms, as well as interactions, all can help you build a more architecture focused project. And I think that helped a lot. As well as the other big thing that ProPrep helped was presentation, because I think near the end when I am first putting my portfolio together, I had great ideas. It was all done and ready to, be presented. The intensive portfolio review sessions helped me a lot with presenting my ideas together. We explored different ways of presenting as well as different methods, and it definitely helped me a lot. Because one big problem when I was first making my portfolio was I made everything the same size because I was like, everything's important. I just leave it like that. But they told me that your main focus should be bigger, or they helped me with different strategies to help the interaction with two pages and the different layouts. All
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah, which is all part of how to show your ideas, right?
Yeah,
Um, in a way that it's just really easy on the consciousness of the person looking at it. It just flows, and it shows that creative flow that you experience in your life. So I think it worked well for you. The fact that you did this introduction to architectural thinking at UBC summer camp, followed by taking the architecture and design portfolio course at the private level so that you had lots of time and flexibility as you worked through that project. And partway through that process, you did the Emily Carr program that was through your high school. What a wonderful opportunity. So including more artistic exploration, I think, is important in an undergrad architecture portfolio, particularly for the Canadian schools anyway, that they don't want just architecture. For the UK schools, you do want more architectural concepts. Um, so that was really useful for you to expand the types of work and to really show your full creative self. Um, and then you came back to Port Prep to let's pull it all together. So I think that was a really good flow. A lot of students just work with Port Prep, but I'm always recommending that people use various means in their communities to help you grow as a creative person. We're helpful along the journey, but it's many things that come together to really create a strong portfolio with the power to get you accepted to the types of schools you were applying to. So, so now that you've been accepted to all these schools and you're getting ready soon to go off and embark on your education. How are you feeling, Benson?
yeah, I'm excited. I think my first semester starts like September 15th, so I'll be there around that time. The reason why I wanted to study in the UK was partly because the mix of architecture, the historic architecture, as well as the modern architecture that is seen all throughout the streets. I did a trip to London back in September, I think, way back in grade nine, March spring break. And I had like amazing opportunities to see like architecture and how it interacts with us, those famous locations as well as the more new and historic sites. And it was just amazed by how um, the historic values as well as the different types of um, buildings interact with the environment, as well as this is why I eventually decided on Manchester, is because Manchester was like the heart of the Industrial Revolution, and so basically they kind of have the mix of modern architecture and old architecture, and yeah, it's quite intriguing there.
Yeah, so it's really, you find it inspiring environment. Well, I wish you tons of great luck. I hope you really enjoy studying there, and I'm sure you'll be really successful. I heard from other students. We had a student who had studied at, I think it was Oxford in the architecture program, and she said it was really quite different approach to education than what we're used to in Canada. But I'm sure you're up to the challenge. And I hope you'll stay in touch and share with us some of the things that you're making. I think
So,
students would
yeah,
find that really interesting to see what is it like to study architecture at Manchester. Well, thank you so much, Benson, for sharing your insights and your portfolio with other students that are contemplating applying for architecture. And thanks so much. It was really nice to talk with you, and you were such a pleasure to work with. My goodness, it really was such a delight. So wish you well, and I want to encourage everybody else that's watching and watch all the way
God
to the
bless.
end. This can happen for you too, right? And you can find the place that's right for you. Like Benson's decided Manchester is right for him. We hope that you indeed agree with that once you're there. But there's so many great schools out there that you can find that it'll be right for you and the kind of creative person you are. And that's, I think, one of the really important things. Your portfolio should be unique to you and show who you are as a creative person. Don't feel that you have to be like Benson, but Benson's just an example of how he explored. Everybody's portfolio is so different, and that's why I love to talk with students and share their final result to help students understand how totally unique everybody is, and that's what they want to see. But I think you had a lot of great advice and examples that keep inform people a little bit more of how they might approach making a portfolio for architecture. Anyway, well, thank you so much, Benson, and stay in touch. All
Yeah,
right.
good luck, everyone.